The politics of this nation are now about to change. You are going to see party, faction after faction after faction, and a house divided cannot stand, and both sides will collapse in on themselves. Both parties, both two of the major parties of this political landscape in this country of Great Britain will collapse in on themselves. And from the ashes something new will arise. But this is a part of the humbling that's coming to this land. Firstly, my judgment or my humbling will come to the powerhouse of the institutions of this land. And so the first one will be to the Houses of Parliament, and then the next ones will be to the institutions of the church. Them too, will also begin to fall apart as things fight against one another, faction against faction. For a divided house cannot and will not stand, and these things will fall. These things will fall to the ground, and great will be their fall. And it will be a time of great humbling to this nation, as the very things that have been held so dear over this country and over this land for indeed hundreds and hundreds of years will finally come to their end, will finally come to the point where they can no longer move forward, and they have to have new wine and they have to have new wineskins, for the old ways and the old systems no longer suffice. And yet through all of this, I will bring about new things in this country, which is a blend of the old and the new. For I always build on that which has gone before. And there are things that have gone before in this country that have long been forgotten. And I will unearth those things, both within the church and within government. And I will rise something new and something fresh. And although it's new and it's fresh, it essentially is not new and it is not fresh, because it's a blend of the old mixed with the new. So there's nothing new under the sun. But what makes it fresh is its new dynamic that it's never had before, is that it's relevant to this time and this place and this space, but it retains ancientness to it. It retains those things that please me. It retains things that are godly and that are righteous. I will change the laws of this land. This land has become forsaken towards me. This land has forsaken my covenants. This land has forsaken my word and my deeds. And this land has gone in a way that I have never wanted it to go. And that is in part why humbling must come upon this land. For I must rectify the wrong that's being done in this nation. For I want this nation to be a sheep nation, not a goat nation. Therefore, I am going to change laws. I'm going to change laws. I'm going to turn the tide back the other way. I'm just going to change things. I'm going to show this nation, for all the fads and the fashions that it goes through in respect to politics and what's right and what's wrong. I'm going to change all of those things, and I'm going to bring about new legislation, a new government, and I'm going to raise up that which has fallen, but make it stronger and better and more dynamic and more full of life for this country. The political system that will rise from the ashes will be much fairer, which will be much more in accordance with and alignment with my word and my ways. It will not necessarily have leaders that are born again or saved, but they will be leaders that will have a sense of propriety and justice and equity and righteousness. And these leaders will lead the land, and they'll lead it well. And they will do away with many of the strange laws that have come about that are obscene to me. And these things will be changed and they will be cast down. And I'm about to bring in a new, fresh season that will allow my church to prosper and flourish in this season. Now, this is a season, and all seasons come to an end. But this season is a long season, and it will be permitted so that my church will grow and blossom throughout this land. And the church that will rise up in this time, especially from the established churches, will look very different from as they currently do now. The established churches are mixed and they are divided. But once these houses fall from the good stuff that will remain, I will raise it up, and it will become strong and it will become beautiful. And yes, to start with, like a newborn, freshly born foal, it's unsteady on its legs, but after a little bit of time, it gets its footing and starts to be able to walk. So too will the established church, as it re-rises out of the ash of its own self-destruction. It will totter and be quite feeble, but then it will soon grow stronger and stronger because I permit it, because there are things in this land which must remain in this land. But I need to take out, there's so much has changed and so much rot has come into the wood that I need to basically gouge out all of the rot, and the structure is terribly rotten. But then I will rebuild it with fresh new timber. But the fresh new timber is made of old oak. And so although it looks new and fresh, it's actually very old. And I will keep that which remains, that I want to remain within the establishments, in the establishment of politics, and in the establishment of the main churches in this land, the ancient churches of this land. I'll permit them to stay. I'll permit them to grow. But they will not look like as they do now. They will be very different. They'll be very ancient, but they'll also be very modern at the same time. They'll retain certain essences of what made them what they are, and I'll permit that. And I'll also permit the rise of prayer houses and monasteries again in this land. There will be a freedom of religion again in this land of Great Britain that this country has not seen before for a long, long time. Hundreds of years have passed since this kind of freedom has been brought about. A new freedom. And there'll be a time of great rejoicing over this land. It will be a time of peace. It will be a time of prosperity. But these things will not happen until after the humbling. And so during this time of humbling, which we're now moving into, you will notice that the nations and this nation will be in turmoil politically. Things will get worse and worse. But do not lose heart, and do not look at the circus show that you will see on your TV screens and in your newspapers, for they will spell heartbreak. They will spell despair. As the people are going, what is going on with our country? What is going on with our politics? What is even going on in our churches? What is going on with this nation? And the world will look on and scratch their heads and go, what is happening to the nation of Great Britain? That once great and stable land seems to be imploding on itself. What is going on? But this is my plan. This is my plan for this nation, because I don't have plans to harm this nation, but I have plans to bless this nation and to raise her up. I have plans to prosper this nation. But before I can raise her up and prosper her, you see, I raise up the humble, and this nation needs to be humble before I can raise her up. But when I raise her up, I'll raise her up as a mighty oak, as a mighty tree in the orchard of the nations, that she will be a tree that will cast a great shadow of shade and refreshing to other trees. She will grow up strong and mighty, not because of her own power and her own glory, but because I permit it, and because I want her in the end of days to be a nation that stands with Israel. And I want this nation of Great Britain to be a sheep nation, not a goat nation. What does that mean? It means as a nation, it's a nation that stands with me. It's a nation that stands up for the word of God. It's a nation that holds tight to me. It is a nation. And although people in this nation, not everyone is going to believe in me, there'll be many that don't, but there'll be many that do. And politics and the new churches that will rise up will be strong on the word, and will be strong on righteousness and judgment and holiness and equity and propriety and piety. And a whole new thing will rise up. Houses of prayer will emerge in new and fresh and dynamic ways, yet ancient at the same time. Like the old monastic orders in this country, they will come back. They will rise up again. Buildings that will be made specifically for the purpose of communities of prayer will rise up, and they will remain in quieter areas of the country. They will remain in countrified areas, so that the people will work the land. And as they work the land, they can actually heal the land by working the land. That as they work and till the ground, they will bless it. And as they work and till the ground, they will pray for this nation, and they will love this nation. And indeed, they will be quintessential pillars that will hold up the new movement that is coming. But know this: prayer houses are prayer houses for what I'm doing. But churches will still be churches. They will still be very evangelistic. Houses of prayer tend to be places where they will focus on me and my word and prayer. But churches, although they will focus on these things, but their primary objective is to raise up the body to the fullness of the maturity of the stature of Christ and to evangelize. And so you need those two things to work together. Houses of prayer and standard type churches will still operate in this land, but they will not compete against each other. There will not be a mistrust or misunderstanding between one another, but both will be parts of a body, the same body. One will be the leg, one will be the arm, one will be the ear, one will be the eye, and together they will facilitate my plans and purposes to come about on this country. Together they will do this. And I want those houses of prayer across this land to have leaders appointed in each house, that they may be aware of leaders of other houses. And once a year, I wish those leaders to gather together and to share corporately what God is doing across this country and across this land. Once a year, they're to meet up, those leaders of each of those houses of prayer and those monastic orders, to see what God is doing in this land. And each house of prayer and monastic order within this nation must be aware of other monastic orders in its local area. I want my people to not be separate. I want my people to be one. I do not want my people to be separate, but I want my people to be one. I'm doing a new thing, yet an old thing in this land. I'm reviving up the ancient paths. I'm opening up the ancient gates. And at this moment in time, some of you may wonder what on earth this word means. But in time, you will see, as you see from the ashes of our political institutions and from the ashes of the established church institutions, new things will rise up. But you'll see old with new. You'll see new with old. You'll see things that you thought you'd never see or have been long forgotten in the annals of time will suddenly come back to life. And I will permit these things to come to life. And it will be my will and my plans and my purposes. And the voice of my prophets throughout this nation will declare this. And the church and the monastic orders and the houses of prayer will embrace these things. As of yet, they don't know what these things are. They surmise as to what they are. But when they appear, they will embrace them. They will be quintessential to this country. They are things that are specifically British. They are things that are specifically that this country has held dear for hundreds and hundreds of years in times past that have been forgotten. I will resurrect those traditions. You see, not every tradition makes the word of God null and ineffective. There are traditions that are good and pleasing to me. And there are things that I will re-rise up again from the ashes of this nation that will be good and wholesome and pleasing. And this will be a time of great revival. This will be a time of great beauty. This will become a green and pleasant land. It will become a plush and prosperous land. And my spirit will move mightily over this land. And it will move in various different ways. Yes, signs and wonders, visions and dreams, but also the establishing of houses of prayer and monastic orders. There is a specific difference here. Monastic orders, houses of prayer will be communities of people that come together and pray, but there'll be monastic orders where people literally will give up their lives to serve in these orders with their families, etc. And they will live there and they will work the land and heal the land and be a people of prayer and meditation and contemplation, and will restore those old monastic orders that have long been taken away from this land. And I want them back. I want them back in this land. They were important to me. They were important to communities of people. They helped the poor. They healed the sick. Signs and wonders flowed through many of these orders. And these things have been forgotten by the history of time. But they happened, and I want it to be reinstituted upon this land again. This nation must be built upon the backs of the prayers. But the church will go forward like a mighty army and will bring in a great mighty harvest in these days because of the prayers that cover them. And never before will you see a synergy, as you will see in those days, where the church, the monastic orders and houses of prayer will be working for one common goal. And the victory of one will be the victory of all of them. There will not be division and schism and mistrust, but there will be wholeness and unity and beauty. Because where brothers and sisters dwell together in unity, I will command the blessing, life forevermore. And this country will have evermore, everlasting life flowing through her veins again. And this country will come back to life. And the land of Great Britain will be healed. And I will move by my Spirit mightily in this land. But remember, just prior to these things happening, you will see a great humbling on this nation. So please do not be perplexed, do not be bemused, do not be in awe and wonder at what you're about to see upon your TV screens and about what you're about to see in your newspapers. This is part of the humbling of this nation. Unfortunately, houses divided against themselves must fall, and there are institutions in this land, and their time has come to fall. But they will only fall for a short time, and then new things will come, new and old, and things will be restored, and this country will be restored quickly, and it will become a tall, mighty oak in the orchard of the nations, and I will bless this land of Great Britain.